We are recording.
Okay.
Okay, it's 2 o'clock, so we will get started. I see a good portion of people. Oh, they keep coming on. So we'll just give it, another half minute or so and see how many more. If the numbers keep going up, we'll hold off. I will be muting everybody. And I can't hear anybody now, so I guess that's part of it. You're already muted. Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the We Want You Board Recruitment webinar. I am Karen Wolf, or Wolfie for many of you who know me, and wanted to welcome you all to the webinar and going to learn a lot today. I'm even interested in this for myself. For those of you who aren't familiar with Grow and Lead, we work with nonprofit organizations and individuals in the communities to grow the capacity of individuals and to lead progress in the UP communities. We do the webinars. We have a lot of other resources available, and the membership is a really sweet deal. You get a lot of benefits with it. So after the webinar, if you want to go on the website for more information, I think you'll be surprised how much we do with a little group of people. I am now going to turn this over to Mr. Chad Mager. He is one of our associates here at Grow and Lead, and he is going to share some really good tips with us today. Take it away, Chad. I'm going on mute.
Thanks, Karen, and welcome everyone. Thanks for taking some time out of your afternoon to listen in on a topic that we hear often from a lot of the organizations we work with is an area of concern, an area that they struggle with, that they don't even know how to go about doing it. And so a lot of what I'm going to share with you today is things that I've learned serving the various boards that we work with across the Upper Peninsula, and learning some good tricks, some good research into some of the best ways to do a good job of recruiting new board members. And so I hope that you'll like the stuff I've learned and what I've presented, and hopefully it'll help you when it comes time to replenishing your board. And we'll also talk a little bit about how to keep that going so that you don't have to get into a crisis mode, which is often when people reach out to us when they're in desperation, rather than doing it ahead of time and being prepared. So we're going to start off with 4 things that I like to point out for. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to let everybody know you're all muted, but if you have any questions, I'll be watching the chat box, and if you're running into any issues with your audio or there's something that you want to bring to Chad's attention, we will have time at the end of the webinar for questions as well. Feel free to type them in as you think of them so you don't forget them, and I will share those with Chad at the end of the webinar. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Wolfie. So yeah, there's 2 ways to go about recruiting for your board. There's a healthy way and there's an unhealthy way, obviously. So these 4 points is what I've really started to try to teach and impart to the boards and nonprofit organizations that we work with. So it's being intentional, targeting your people you want to recruit, being thorough in your search and also in your process, and have it a continuous, ongoing. So I just want to introduce those 4 stages, those 4 bullet points, 4 ideas, because I'm going to go far more in depth with them later on in the webinar to kind of flesh them out and hopefully give you some really good tools and tips. But I wanted to start off with the positive before we get into the second, which is the unhealthy board recruitment. And I want to start there to get it out of the way so then we can come back to the good practices. But the number one thing I probably see is a lot of organizations that have, and let's be honest, just a lot of excuses of why they don't recruit or can't find good board members or can't find people willing to serve on their board, all sorts of stuff. So everyone has a bunch of reasons why they can't get good board members. And we'll talk a little bit more later too. It's not just about finding the right people, it's about also training them to be the right people for your board. But we'll get to that. So we're going to touch on some of these unhealthy board recruitment typical behaviors. And so they start off with being last minute. In other words, in 2 months, your board has a bunch of people leaving it because they've termed out, because they've resigned, whatever the case might be. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, we need to recruit board members. So that last minute thing makes you desperate to go and find anybody. In other words, are you willing? Great, come in and join our group. Now you can already see, hopefully with my tone of voice, that's not the best practice. You want to find someone who's going to really enhance and serve your organization, not simply find someone to fill a spot, because that's where we get into trouble and going, I don't understand why this board can't be on the same page. Well, when you're getting in desperation mode and you just need to fill a position on your board and go out and accept any person, anybody, just so you can have your quota, your number of people you need, you'll run into those problems down the road of how they don't fit your organization, they don't know what they're getting into, all that kind of stuff. So the other unhealthy ones is a lack of vetting or doing some background checks on potential board members or new board members. Just like in any organization where you'd want to have a good policy and practice in place to do checks on anyone volunteering in your organization. But it's amazing how many organizations don't do that for their board members, who have a vital role, of course, in our organizations and control a lot, including finance or financial oversight and a lot of big decision making. So the fact that we don't go that step and really do a little bit of a background check or do some vetting or asking some references when it comes to our board members is a really short-sighted and a lack that we need to really pick up on. If nothing else, if you do have volunteers and they run through a background check process, if nothing else, you should have your board members at least do that as well. You can go farther than that if you want to go a step farther. I had one person throw out a question like, yeah, you're just going to scare people away if you have that much kind of stuff where you're looking into them. And I'm going to be honest here, that's okay. It really is, because you're talking about the future of your organization, the mission of your organization, and anybody who's willing to step up and serve in that vital, important decision-making role. Frankly, if they have something in their past they're concerned about, they should already be coming forward with that in their application process. Otherwise, what do they have to hide? Like myself, I've been asked to serve on some boards, and again, going through that vetting process, like, you bet I'm an open book. I got nothing to hide. If I did, I wouldn't be saying yes, and I'd like to go through this process to serve you. So you want to have people serving on your board you are completely confident that there's no skeletons in their closet that would have concern for your organization or potentially hurt your organization. And also keeping out people that really aren't qualified to serve on your board for one reason or another. Again, this is an extreme and everyone can chuckle about it, but if someone has embezzlement in their background, you don't want to make them the treasurer of your board. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it's important to do a little bit of research, to do a little bit of checking to make sure you're protecting your organization, because that is your primary goal and primary responsibility as a board member. And then lastly too is, so then we go and recruit these people, even if the recruiting part's been done right, it's been done ahead of time, there's a plan in place, you did your background checks, it seems like the person's a perfect fit for your board, and then they get on the board and they just never get trained. They never get any kind of information, any orientation, and they just kind of are left to figure out on their own. That's also doing a disservice and will hurt your future recruitment, because that board member now that has been treated that way and doesn't have a clue what they're doing, does not feel adequately prepared to do the work of a board member, when they leave or even while they're in it, they're going to tell others, yeah, they never really explained what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm kind of just going along and trying to figure it out on my own. That's not a good reputation to have as a board. And so boards really should have a policy and practice in place on how to get someone oriented to the board, or onboarding, or whatever term you want, trained so they know exactly what their responsibilities are, what their roles might be, what they might be called to do on a board. So if any of these hit home, you found yourself last minute trying to find someone to fill the spot on the board, you've been desperate, willing to almost take anyone, you haven't done your due diligence and looking into the person that you're about to accept onto your board, and then you don't train them or inform them on how they're supposed to act and behave and what their responsibilities are for a board, you're falling under the unhealthy board recruitment. So, but there's hope. You can change, you can do things. But you know what the biggest thing, even at these unhealthy board recruitments, one of the bigger things that I hear often is that there's tons of excuses of why we can't recruit. Just there's reasons and reasons, and we'll get into some of those. But the biggest reason why people fail to be able to recruit board members is fear. We're afraid to ask people to serve. We're afraid to ask people to give of their time. We're afraid that the work might be overwhelming to somebody, or they're just not going to want to put the effort in here. So we have a lot of excuses that are based upon our fear of why we don't actively recruit board members. Here's the excuses we often hear. I'm not going to ask so-and-so because they're just too busy. I know Dr. So-and-so already serves on 7 boards. He's not going to want to consider ours. No, I've been on this board for a while and it just takes too much commitment. And so I know this person is not going to want to commit to that. Or, man, this person just said all of the background checking and stuff we do is just so nosy, and it's uncomfortable. Or, I don't want to beg somebody to serve on our board. And the classic, well, I'm not going to ask them because they're just going to say no anyway. Folks, these are all excuses. And the biggest thing I'll tell you right now is you need to move past yourself. You need to move past your fear, because there's an answer to every single one of these. And that is, you're telling somebody and you're already making up your mind that they're too busy, that they serve on too many boards, that it's too much of time commitment. They're just going to say no anyway. You're making up their mind for them before you've ever made the ask. So in other words, don't be afraid to ask someone. Let them tell you no. Don't go into the ask already assuming they're going to say no. You have no idea, unless maybe the person's your sibling or something, but you have no idea what's going on in other people's lives, and we make a lot of assumptions on what's going on in someone's life. So you're one of these ones, they already serve on several boards. I've given this example many times. You have no idea if that person is already about to term off a bunch of those boards or leave them because they don't feel like they're passionate about it anymore, or they're done with that season of life or whatever, and they want to shift their focus to a different mission. You have no idea unless you ask. So don't make up their minds for them. Take the step. Again, there's a process we'll explain in a little bit. Once you've gone through the process, you've identified a good candidate that would be a good fit for your organization and for your board, make sure you make the ask. Let them tell you no. Don't assume a no is going to come, because you just don't know. You just don't know. And again, I would already caution, if someone's concerned about you running a simple background check or asking to talk to a couple people in their realm, or as a reference, or someone they work with or whatever, if they're afraid of that, that might be a red flag. Because again, I cannot think of the times I've been asked I've ever been hesitant. It's like, I got nothing to hide, and I want to be a benefit to your organization. If they're concerned about that, it might be best just to move on and say, okay, well, we'll just check with someone else. It's no biggie. We're not going to pressure you or anything. Asking someone to serve on a board is never begging. You're not begging, because here's why. You want someone with a willing heart and ready to serve, because that's what board leadership is all about. It's when you serve on a board for a nonprofit, it's all about serving. It's not about getting glory. It's not about a position of power. It's about service. And so you never want to beg someone, because the moment you get to begging someone to be on your board, now they are not coming fully bought in. They're not coming to give fully of themselves. They're doing it out of a sense of obligation, or because they feel like they have a role they have to fill. They feel obligated, and that's not the kind of start you want to have with a new board member. You want them to want to be there. If your current board has a bunch of people who just feel obligated to stay there, I would have your board chair have a real serious talk with them, whether it's something they want to continue doing. And again, I just heard, figuratively, a gasp. We can't get rid of any more board members. We'll not have enough board. Again, there's that fear. The fear that we can't replace or we can't find good board members. In all my work with nonprofits, the several times I've been asked to be a part of the board recruitment process, those organizations were in desperation mode. They were scared. Their numbers had dwindled to very few board members, and they were worried about their long-term existence. We made a plan. They worked the plan. They made the asks. And by the time I came back and followed up with a month or two later, they had a full board. Why? Because the plan was like this magical, process that just is going to work magic? No, but they made a plan, they worked their plan, and the plan had outcomes. And to see, when you go back to it, we'll talk about a little bit, when you're intentional, thorough, you target, and you're continuous, it's much easier to get people and find people that fit your needs as the organizational's board, and also to find people willing, because you're not sticking to one or two people. You have a list that you're going to. So be careful when you find yourself or you hear fellow members of your board making these excuses of why they can't find somebody or why they can't ask a good candidate, a potential person for your board, because these are just excuses. And there are ways to work around these, and there are ways to tell them, you're being a little too negative, and we can actually turn this around and make this work. So going back to my 4 points of the healthy board recruitment, let's dig into them and see what we can find and learn from them. The first one is being intentional. You've just heard me in the last minute talk several times about having a plan. This is the key. Sometimes boards are full of very well-intentioned but very, very busy people. And so they want to get to the board meeting, do the work, say yays, nays, move on, done. We're in and out of here in an hour or so. The problem is, if that's the way you continuously operate, there's no planning ahead of time to do some things that need to be looked at on an ongoing basis. Maybe your organization, let's hope, I'm going to cross my fingers, has a, what do you want to call it, board governance, recruiting, what are some other terms, a nomination committee, any of those kind of committees that should be working on this stuff on a regular basis. And I'll make a plea for that a little bit later as too. Because this work can't just be wait till the month or two before people are done serving on your board. You need to have a plan. So the start of the plan, as it says right there, is know how many people do you need in your upcoming, whether it's elections or appointments or however your organization does it. How many people do you actually need to fill positions on your board? Whether it's, do we have 2 people terming off this year because of the terms of office and the length of them? Did anyone resign recently? Is anyone, when it comes up to again, at the end of a fiscal year or whatever, an annual meeting, decide, you know what, I still have a year left on my term, but I'm resigning to move to do something else, etc. I hate to say this, but this is true. especially since we have a lot of elderly people who serve on boards and bring us their great wisdom. Sometimes there is a passing away of somebody. So just know how many people do you need to fill to have your board full and ready to hit the ground running for the next year. The next thing is knowing what you need. Again, having a board just full of people who are nice and like what you do, good. They might be hard workers, they might be willing to serve, they're passionate about your mission, but it really, really helps in the work of the board to have a wide variety of skills, experiences, and yes, diversity. So in other words, we have a lot of people in our boards that are older, who've really catch the fire of serving, have been serving on boards most of their lives. But at some point, many can't keep going. And one of the most untapped age groups is our new workers into the workforce who are just not being asked to serve. And they bring different perspective. They bring different ways of tackling issues. And sometimes we're just not hearing their voice. So I'm always encouraging a lot of boards, especially if they're on the older side, to look at the youth and see what are these new workers in the workforce offering. Other diverse is about your experiences, your backgrounds. Take a look at what your mission is in your organization. What are you trying to accomplish? What does it try to do? And is there people with certain skill sets, education, experience that really can enhance and help the staff or the mission of the organization do, even better, enhance it. There are some skill sets you definitely want in almost every board. You want someone with some kind of financial background or understanding. That's helpful because you're overseeing the finances. Someone who has experience in nonprofits is always beneficial if you're a nonprofit organization, to know how boards work with the executive director, how they interact with the staff, just what their roles and responsibilities are. That's always a great one. And then the other ones can be, what does your organization do? Are you in the health realm? So obviously someone that works in the health field would be great to have on your board because they can speak about how your mission of your organization impacts the greater health of the community, etc. So look for those diverse sets of skills, education, experience, age, race, whatever it might be, to try to make your board cover as much ground as possible. And also, the more diverse your board, the more networks you're tapped into. So later, when you look at your responsibility in the fund development area of your organization, now you're reaching far more networks than you would if you just zero and honed in on a certain set of group of people that are all like-minded from similar backgrounds. Being diverse can be a very, very positive improvement to your organization. And the tool we use to find out those top two needs is a board matrix. And I think our habit here is to send out the recording and the slides usually about a day after our webinars, and I will make sure my coworker includes a sample board matrix. Let me describe what this is. All it is it's a rows and columns kind of spreadsheet, and you have listed all the different things you want to know from your current board members and or committee members, which is a really nice document to have. But you list them all. You list their experience and skills, all that you can think of. You list the different areas of diversity and the demographics of your board. And then the columns are each board member that's serving on your board. And then they take this self-assessment and check off the areas that they feel competent or confident in. And then someone, hopefully it's a committee, will take this matrix and look at it, and it's very easy to see where there are gaps. Like, wow, we have a lot of great experience in this area, this area, this area, but right here, this would really enhance our board and help with the work we do if we had someone with this background. And right now that's missing. And there's where you start with the intentionality. So you have a plan, you start looking to see what your needs are, you know how many people you need, you know what kind of skill sets you need. It's great to include committee members, why I mentioned that, because if you have active committees, they're a great place to get people who are already bought in, already serving your organization, who might be ready and willing who step up into a more formalized board role. And there you'll already see all of their skills and experiences and areas of ability already lined out. So if you can get those people to take the fill out the board matrix, that's even a big plus. The board matrix will also have the schedule of when people's terms are up. So then again, as a planning tool, having a plan, you can look and see who's going off the board when, so we can have a long-term plan of being prepared the next year, how many more people we need to recruit and prepare for. So with that in mind, once you're armed with how many you need, what kind of skill sets are not represented right now that you may need, that are specific to your organization, then you target, which sounds like a scary thing. You're targeting people. But what it is that you're looking to narrow your focus to people with specific, whether it's specific demographics, specific skill sets, whatever it is, and you're not just doing the shotgun or the bomb approach and just hoping for that anybody. You're looking for a specific person with the passion for your mission that has these abilities that can help push your organization forward, move forward, be better, improve. So a great activity to include at least a couple times a year in your board meetings is brainstorming. So whether it's the nominating committee or board governance committee or whatever it is, hopefully you'll have one that's active, we'll bring to the board and say, here are the things we need. We have at the end of the year coming up, we need 3 new board members because these 2 people are terming off. You know about John and he resigned. So we need to fill 3 positions. Here's the areas that we're lacking most according to our board matrix. All right. And then all of a sudden goes, oh, now people are not just coming up with people out of the sky, out of the cloud of who might be a good board member. Now they have some direction. So when they're brainstorming, it is brainstorming. That's open to any ideas and all ideas. But already you've told them, as we're brainstorming, these are the things we need. So the brainstorming becomes focused on thinking of people and individuals that fit those parameters. And then all of a sudden you find out it's actually easier. It is easier to come up with a list of names when you're targeting and you have a list of parameters or needs that you need to fill than it is just to open up and say, who do you got? Which is unfortunately how a lot of boards work. Just someone, who do you think would be good on the board? This way, again, your brain's already thinking a certain way and you're thinking about who do I know it's good in finance? And that would really be enhancing to our board and would love our mission. That's different than just saying, who's the next board member? Who's good? Once you have that list, a couple of things can happen. And it really depends on your organization on how you want to go about this. You'll notice the next few things I have was talking about already going out and doing the ask. I'm going to back it up kind of a little bit by saying, once that list of brainstormed people is given, if you have that committee, that governance, nominating, whatever you want to call it, committee, the best case would be have them take that back to their committee meeting and look over the list of names. And in some ways, already start filtering through, see who they rises to the top in the list of priority. Do a little bit of not a background check because these people haven't even been asked yet, but just kind of like, what do we know about this person? What do they do? Okay, well, that is a good fit. So that's a good suggestion. So they kind of work the list a little bit, massage it a little bit to be able to come back to the board the next time and say, all right, we looked at all the names of the people. We looked kind of into them a little bit. And here's who we think might be good people for us to contact first for our board openings. And then you go to the steps I have listed on the slide. You figure out who has a connection to this person. Maybe it was the person that suggested them in the brainstorming session. Maybe it's not. Maybe someone else there has a stronger connection, whether it's a personal or professional one. And they'll step up and say, all right, I'll step up. I'll have the guts to go ask them and see if they might be interested in board service. All right. And once that's made, once you've kind of gotten those few people, the first top few that you want to fill, make assignments with those board members and say, okay, you committed to having a discussion with this person. The deadline is, this is just an example, is next month's meeting. So make sure you get that conversation done. Let us know what they think. Let us know if they're interested. But the biggest thing is those people that commit to doing that ask is be prepared. Be prepared. Any good potential board member worth anything is going to ask you questions about your organization. It's going to ask you about what life and serving your organization looks like. So be prepared, be educated on your organization. Know if you've been kind of running on autopilot and don't really know the way to communicate what your roles and responsibilities, brush up on that. Meet with one of your officers so they can make sure they can help you be prepared to answer questions that potential candidates to your board might have. It's just going to make, what it does is it's the expectation level. So if you can give them more and more information, now a potential board member, before they fill out an application, before they go through the process, if they can know what's my expectation, what's my time commitment, what does this look like to serve on this board, the more you're going to have, again, a better prepared, a more open person, ready to learn, ready to come in and do things and not just be wide-eyed and confused and scared. So be prepared. Prepare yourself before you make the ask. Don't just go out there and start asking people and they say, well, tell me more. Oh, I don't know, I can get you more information. That's going to turn people off, and again, set you back into desperation mode when you don't have people interested because you're not actually educating them on what they really will be doing. So again, be intentional. Have a plan. Have a plan. Make a plan. Target the individuals that would most help and benefit your organization. Make sure you're looking for specific people, not just any people. Next, be thorough. Once you've gotten to the place where you've found someone, they sound like they're interested, they could be a potential good board member, now it's time to be thorough. Make them fill out an application. If you don't have a candidate for your board to fill out an application, please do. That will tell you even, again, more information on, is this person a real fit? Is there some things in their background and experiences that we didn't even realize that are really going to be a benefit for us? You can see those through an application. Usually there's a part of an application to say, why do you want to serve in this organization? That's a big one to read and understand, because you want their reasons to be, I'm passionate about serving these kids and making sure they complete high school. That's just an example. What you don't want to see, really, really you don't, is, well, I need to look good in my profession and I think serving on this board will make me look good. And right now, I bet you're all going, that's ridiculous. No one ever says that. And I'll tell you, you're dead wrong. I've actually had people in board meetings tell me that is the reason why they're serving on a particular board. If that's the only reason, that worries me, because that doesn't sound like they're invested much in what's really happening. In other words, they're there for their own purposes, not the purpose of the mission of the organization. So again, have them fill out an application. I mentioned this a little bit early. Make sure you have at least a minimal background check. Someone mocked me one time saying references, they're only going to pick good people. Yeah. You're right. They're going to tell you people to talk to that should be close to them and know them. But also the kind of questions you ask those references can be really, really helpful. In other words, you can ask a reference to say, this person's applying to serve on this board. Does this sound like it's something that they've been interested in the past? Is this mission something that you've heard that they're passionate about? Now, that person might go, well, no, it really surprises me they want to do this. Okay, now you have a judgment call to say, should I talk to our candidate and find out why it's the first time they're getting into this realm? Maybe they just want to try something new. Maybe their passions have changed. Or do you need to have a tough question of like, your references were surprised you're trying to come out of this board. Why'd you pick us now? And that's just a fruitful conversation. And that can happen in that third point, the interview process, where you want to talk to someone, make sure they're comfortable with what they're getting into, they understand the responsibilities and the time commitments, and you really get a good sense from them that they understand your mission and why it's important and what you're trying to do as a board. Big one, have an orientation process, please. This is about educating, again, knowing how to get them up to speed and not left. I've talked to board members who've been serving on a board for 6 months and said, wow, until you told me today about my roles and responsibilities as a board member, I had no idea what I was doing here. That wasted 6 meetings of that person's time and it hasn't helped the organization one bit. That's just unproductive and inefficient for everybody. So things you want to include in an effective orientation could be this is just a small list of things you can consider. Having a tour of the office or facility that the nonprofit works out of, just so they have an idea of where does the work get done, or where's our office where things start. Having a meeting or a presentation with the executive director or key staff in your organization, again, a chance for them to really get to understand and learn what's happening in your organization. Why are we doing this? What's the importance of it? And no one's going to do that better. No one's going to tell that story better than an executive director of an organization or some key staff members. Make sure you have in an orientation process documents on the history of the organization. Maybe you have a current newsletter, or make sure they have access and know where the website and various social media is. You might want to share your articles of incorporation. If you have a current strategic plan that you are operating under, make sure you share that. And why that's a big one is, again, if I'm a new board member coming in, I want to see where are we and where are we going? What am I getting myself into? And so a strategic plan should kind of show and outline what are some of the goals coming up in the next few years for this organization. And so as a new board member, that would be very beneficial to me to go, okay, wow, I know where the direction we're headed. So now when I start making decisions coming right out of the gate and I have to vote on stuff, I can line it up to this strategic plan and say, hey guys, is this really line up with what we're supposed to be doing? According to your plan, this is a little bit off. There you go. Recent financials. It's a big one. Big one. Because honestly, any board members walking in wants to know what kind of situation they're walking into. Not all of them will be scared off if the situation's not great, but some might be, and that's okay. That's where they're at. But show them your recent financials so they know what they're getting into. Have either the treasurer or the staff finance person help explain, give a presentation and explain and understand how to read the financial statements. Yes, believe it or not, there's a lot of people who have no clue what the financial statements mean. They just don't. They've never been introduced to them. They don't have a business or finance background. They don't have a clue. So they need to be taught, what is the balance sheet? What is my income statement? What is this budget? So have someone like the treasurer or a finance person on staff sit down and explain to a new board member what this means, what they should be looking for. And also then looking for maybe the organizational chart. Kind of who does what work where in this organization, and here's how it looks. That's helpful too, because as a new board member, or once you're identified as a board member, people in the community are going to ask you, well, I know so-and-so works for your organization, they have this role. At least now you're introduced and you have an idea of what that person may do when you have a little bit of the org chart, or you know the different programs and activities of your organization. So there's the list of all the different programs. If you have a multi-site organization, where are the places, where are the communities you serve? If you have active committees, that the orientation should include the committee descriptions and the role the committee serves, because here's why that's vitally important. You have a new board member, you're going to want them to serve on a committee, aren't you? So giving them that information right up front, here's the different committees, here's the role they play, it helps inform that person where they see themselves fitting in when it comes to the committee structure. So give it to them ahead of time. Don't give them a list of 4 different committees and say, pick one, you need to serve on one, and there's no description or explanation or what they do or anything. That's just not going to be productive. Also, make sure that a new board member goes through some kind of presentation that we like to call here at Grow and Lead Board 101. So in other words, it's the basic roles and responsibilities of any board members, and specifically the expectations of what it takes to serve and be a good board member. I think every board member should have to go through that. It's just the basics. And again, I mentioned the guy who'd been serving for 6 months and didn't even know what his roles and responsibilities were. That's just a waste of so many people's time. Also, an orientation should have meeting minutes for the last couple of meetings, the meeting schedule going forward. Perhaps you have a board manual, which sometimes has policies on the behavior and activities of the board. It'd be good to get. And then last but not least, make sure they meet with the board chair. Those of you who are on this call that might be a board chairperson or board president, whatever your organization uses, it's your job to make sure new members feel welcomed, they feel up to speed, they know what they're getting into. So, and it's also, if you're serving as their leader, the leader of the board, it's great to have a one-on-one with a new person to go, okay, I know who I'm going to for questions, for guidance, for leadership. So meet with them, even if it's not during the typical orientation session or whatever. At some time, build that relationship with a new board person and make sure they know that you're there to help and serve as much as possible. So we've had being intentional, having a plan when it comes to recruiting. You have to be targeted and look for specific individuals in your brainstorming to fit the needs and holes and lack of experience or whatever activities. So you want to find specific people. You want to be thorough. You want to do your homework. You want to do a good job at this. And last of the 4 points I had, you want to be continuous. So I mentioned many times already a board development, board governance, or nomination committee. If you don't have one, start one. How often they meet, really they can brainstorm and how much they feel like they need to do this. But why that group is so important is because you need to continually be looking and continually updating that list I mentioned. So the third one says, don't ever stop searching or brainstorming. Always have, that committee should always have at its disposal a list of potential candidates to serve on your board, people that you can ask. What that does is now you're never caught off guard. You're never in desperation. You're never last minute, because you always have somebody that you could approach, somebody that has the potential, somebody that has skill sets that you need for your board. And all it takes is someone stepping up to go ask them. So an unexpected, the last point here, they don't always leave at the end of their term. So unexpectedly someone passes away, someone resigns, someone moves out of the area, and you have an opening. It's not a point of crisis. It's a point of going back to the committee, board development committee, and saying, all right, who's next? Who do we have on our list that we can next approach? Especially looking now in light of maybe what are we losing with the person that's leaving, and what do we need to replace as a part of skill set? Again, you can go to that list and go, okay, well, this was our top candidate right now to possibly ask, but this person down here, they really fit what we're losing in the outgoing and leaving board member. So maybe that's the better ask right now. Does that make, hopefully that makes sense. So you want a group of people who are continuously looking, and they're the ones, again, looking at that list, revising that list as you find, have casual conversations with the community, that with somebody, and say, oh, you know what, I just talked to them a month ago. I know they're top on our list. I know for a fact they're serving on 6 boards. And when I joked with him that we've always considered him for, or her for, board membership, they laughed and said, oh, don't even think about it. Okay, well, there's your answer. You found out. Now go back and give that to the committee. It says, okay, we'll take that person off the list. And then you don't have to go through the effort later on to know that it's not going to happen, at least for that time. Maybe next year is different. But again, always being prepared. It's a continuous process. It doesn't mean you have to meet once a month to do this work. It may be a few times a year or whatever, but it needs to be an ongoing process, so you're always prepared. The other thing, by the way, a board development committee does, besides recruitment of board members, they're making sure they're part and responsible for the education of the board. So not just helping come up with an orientation, which is really good, but making sure that on a continuous basis that the board is continuing to learn about how to perform well as a board. Maybe you need help with running your meetings more efficiently or effectively because they keep on going way over time. So the board development is really, it's about developing the board. So you want to have them looking for ways to continue to improve the board and educate the board so we can work better together for the sake of the organization. So again, if you don't have that kind of committee, I'd strongly suggest it. It will help you be able to continuously look and be ready and be researching and preparing for potential new people to step up and serve. Another thing this committee can do, as I mentioned, is there are other committees that you may have in your organization. And again, I said this earlier, it's a prime fishing pond for potential board members, because again, they're involved, they're lending some sort of expertise. So you might have, just throw out something, an accountant and a banker on your finance committee that does the oversight of the organization's finances. Wow, there's a potential board member right there, and they've been serving on the committee for a year or two, and you're going, that person, he or she, should be at the top of our list if we ever were to lose one of our finance people, and we have them right there. And so opportunities to groom some of those committee members to be involved in board activities so they get a taste of what it means to serve at the board level. There's a lot of opportunities and a lot of ways that this committee can do much more than just strictly looking for new potential board members. So that kind of wraps up my thing. My 4 points again: being intentional, have a plan, make a plan so that recruiting is never going to be this scary thing to worry about. When you're going out and ready to ask people to be on your board, target specific people with specific skills or whatever, and so that it narrows your list down. It makes it easier to figure out who might be good to serve. So target, use the bullseye, don't use the shotgun approach. Be thorough, do your homework on the people that you're entrusting, because it's really is a trust thing. When you add someone to your board, you're trusting them to make good decisions on behalf of the organization and to protect the interests of the organization. So do your homework, be thorough. Make sure you're thorough also in training of your new board members so they know what they're supposed to be doing and how to get the work done. And lastly, make it an ongoing process. Don't just make it to be all of a sudden when it's last minute and scary and you're going to just accept somebody who may not really be interested at all, but they just feel guilted into serving. No, make it continuous. Look for opportunities to educate yourself as a board so you can do the best job possible to get the best people for the betterment of your organization. So that's the content I have right now. Now I'm going to turn it back to my coworker and ask Wolf if anyone had any burning questions, whether it's about the content or you may have a question about a specific roadblock or something that happened in your recruiting efforts that you want just to get an opinion on. We can handle those as well. So Wolfie, do anyone have any questions?
I do not have any questions at this point.
Okay.
One person had problems with the audio, and I hope it came back. Otherwise, we have recorded the webinar, and a link will be sent out to you that if you did miss a portion of it, you can listen to it again. I had a couple of comments. I serve on a board outside of Grow and Lead and made a few notes when Chad was talking about recruiting because I am always kind of keeping an eye out for potential board members. And I just wanted to say that be okay with having somebody say no. It's better if they say no than if they take it on. It's not a rejection of you. Either they don't have the time or it's not a good fit. And I actually got a rejection today from someone I reached out to that I had spoken to. And I just, thanked him for getting back to me and said that if things changed, he had staff changes at where he works, keep that door open because in the future it may work out better for people. And another reason that it's good to ask is if you don't, you're denying them an opportunity when it might be something they'd be very interested in.
Very good point.
Well,
Very good.
it
Yeah,
looks
thank you,
like
everyone. We really appreciate it. And like Wolfie said, we're gonna send out to you the recording and the slides. And like I said, I'll make sure, I believe our coworker Victoria will send this out. We'll also include a sample matrix, board matrix, in case that's something that you might be interested or start you on your journey on how to recruit some new members. So, Wolfie?
yes, thank you, Chad. You did great. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And if you have any questions, you know who to call. And tomorrow's Friday. Have a very good rest of the day.